Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on all things narcissistic, toxic, difficult, antagonistic. I'm hoping that this channel and these episodes and these videos become a sort of survival guide. You can watch all of them or you can pick the ones that actually suit your particular situation, because narcissistic relationships can be your parents, could be your partner, could be a colleague, could be a boss, could be a friend, and those different relationships have different demands. Today, we're going to take on a pattern that we often see in narcissism. I kind of wish I put this in the glossary series, but this pattern is called oppositionality. Before we get to oppositionality, I'm always going to invite you, if you do end up liking this video, please hit that like, give me that thumbs up. Maybe it gives me validation. And if you'd subscribe to this channel, it would be great, because then you could also access all of these videos and be told if you hit that bell every time we put out new content. So let's take on this topic of oppositionality. Like I said, I really wish I had put this particular video in the Narcissism Glossary series. And listen, we can stick it in there as a late entry of sorts. This is a theme. This theme of oppositionality has been something that's been coming up more and more societally. And as I continue to read and do research in the area of narcissism, I could see it is a very, very narcissistic pattern that bears more discussion. Now, oppositionality is just what it sounds like. In a lay person's language, it would take in territory including acting out, stubbornness, being what we call contrarian, saying, no, my way, and disagreeing, petulance, or just overall brattiness. Oppositional people go out of their way to not do what is being asked of them. Ask them to put the toilet seat down, they leave it up. Ask them to turn a light off when they leave the room, they don't do it. Ask them to wear a mask to keep a family member safe, they refuse. And when they refuse, it is not unusual for them to come back with, you aren't going to tell me what to do. You're not my mother or my father. I don't have to do that, and you can't make me. No one can take away my freedom. And they take this stance, this oppositional stance, on both big ticket and small ticket issues. Toilet seats all the way to paying taxes. Now, interestingly, oppositionality is what can make narcissistic divorces very complicated. As I have said many times, all a narcissist wants in a divorce is to win, whatever it is that winning means to them. And they may even attempt to win even if they end up paying more on lawyers' fees than they would have had to give you. They will fight everything from legal discovery and providing documents to schedule mediation appointments. They'll be oppositional on everything to who gets the kids at what time on Thanksgiving. Not because it's important to them, but just to go against the grain. It's this oppositionality that feeds so much of the guidance around the pointlessness of asking a narcissist to do something. Their oppositionality often means that you are setting yourself up to hear a no pretty much no matter what you ask them to do. Oppositionality is often the core of many relationship arguments with a narcissist, especially when you're married to them or in any kind of close relationship to them. Things may actually be going okay in your relationship on many days, but the day you ask them to do something, whether it's simple or complex, that's when the fights begin. And then you may find yourself in the uncomfortable position of just doing things yourself just to avoid having to ask them. Unwittingly, it may actually feel like you might be enabling them, but in the same breath, you may say, by the time I expend the effort, have the conflict, go through the stress and the exhaustion about the argument about the dishwasher or driving the carpool, I could have gotten it done. And in this way, many people who are in narcissistic relationships become incredibly efficient because they do just get it all done in the name of avoiding the, could you please do this argument? Now, sadly, this is not always going to be sustainable, and the day will come when you will have to ask them. And yes, even when you're taking care of 90% of what needs to get done in a family or a workplace, they don't see it. They just see that they're being asked to do something and will become oppositional and rail against it. Now, oppositionality is seen across all kinds of narcissism, but it may be most pronounced, interestingly, in covert narcissism, where their chronic sense of victimhood and their sense that the world is out to get them can play into being petulant when they feel like they're being taken advantage of or told what to do. And they will fight against that thing that you asked them to do, even when the thing you are asking them to do is actually to their advantage. Research by Stringaris and Goodman highlighted what they believe to be the three patterns that underlie oppositionality. Oppositional behavior is hurtful, headstrong, or being irritable. Their research was actually focused on children, but you can see how these patterns, headstrong and all of that, are very much classical elements of adult narcissism. Oppositionality is something that may actually give us a bit of a developmental sign to pay attention to. It's a pattern that we can observe in childhood, and in the most extreme cases, children who are chronically oppositional, the ones who get into trouble at school, they get into trouble with their peers, they get into trouble at home, and who don't do anything that is asked of them. And they frequently act out when they're asked to do something. If it's pervasive enough, they may receive a diagnosis of something called oppositional defiant disorder. I haven't seen anyone in the literature address this as a risk factor for adult narcissism, though research has pointed out that elements of narcissism can place children at risk for conduct disorder, which can presage antisocial personality disorder, which is often viewed as a diagnostic variant of psychopathy. And oppositionality puts people at risk for all of this. We don't have the data, but it would be fascinating to get the longitudinal data that may give us insight into whether childhood oppositionality is a predictor of adulthood narcissism. But all of that said, when it comes down to it, the oppositionality, I can promise you, it has been there for your entire relationship. In fact, it may be why they are successful in their chosen fields. They were oppositional enough that in the workplace, everyone got out of their way because it was just too difficult to fight with them. And in some cases, their insistence on doing it their way may have actually gotten things to a profitable place. Oppositionality can result in lots of people enabling them, mostly in the form of giving in to difficult oppositional folks because it is simply too difficult to fight them on it. It's a bit like that dishwasher example I gave you. When their oppositionality collides with their entitlement, it gets very unpleasant. They may not follow rules, policies, procedures, whether in businesses or other public places, and behave like a difficult child when they harass and harangue whatever unfortunate employee has to deal with them, when they ask, "Why do I need to wait in a line? There's a better way to run this place. And you know what? I shouldn't have to wait in this line, so I'm not going to wait in this line." And they might even go on so far as to say, "You're infringing on my constitutional rights by making me wait on this line." And then it starts feeling like a word salad, upside down, weird soliloquy. They will fight rules on how airplanes are boarded, how luggage is put away, how forms are filled out, how deadlines are managed, where furniture is placed, you name it. They will be oppositional. And the oppositionality means that this goes way beyond the usual entitlement of, "Don't you know who I am? I shouldn't have to wait in this line." It can then devolve into a person who then actually has to fight someone with how their procedure is wrong, and that there is no way they will follow it, and you can't tell them to turn off their phone in a movie theater or while the plane is about to take off, and you can't tell them they need to take that phone outside or they need to sit someplace else. Their oppositionality can sometimes make them a little bit scary because they are so insistent on not doing something they're asked that it can manifest as bullying and rage or yelling. Again, it's why so many people cave into them and they just keep getting rewarded for their oppositionality. Oppositionality is a major headache in the workplace. These are the people who may refuse to help out in the workplace. For example, they might say, that's below my pay grade. Or they might just cite some sorts of rights they have so they don't have to do certain jobs. If you work in a place where sometimes it's a crisis and it just has to be all hands on deck, the oppositionality of a narcissist means that you are not likely to get their hands on deck, especially if they have a tendency to feel victimized. If you ask them to do something outside of their job description or outside of their work hours, forget about it. If you ask them to serve on an optional committee to be a team player, absolutely not. They will be petulant, they will grind their heels in simply for the sake of exerting their rights and being oppositional and getting their way. If you are in a relationship with a narcissist and you can't get out of it, then you are going to need to craft some oppositionality workarounds. These may involve having to do a little bit of fluffing, which never feels good. Gosh, you were such a help last week when I had to get all that stuff done upstairs. I know you have so much going on, but if you get a free second, I would love your help again because God, you're so useful. That's very different than saying to them, yo, I need you to come up here now to move the bed so I can vacuum under it. Again, it is exhausting to keep figuring out the workarounds to get very simple things done. But a bit of fluffing can be a back door to getting their cooperation. Now, oppositionality is why many narcissists seem like spoiled children or difficult teenagers who don't want to put out the trash or do their chores. It's the same dynamic as before. And as the researchers I had talked about earlier in this video had mentioned, there may be three elements to oppositionality: hurtfulness, for example, saying things that are unkind, especially when you're asked to do something, like name calling when someone asks you to do something. Irritability, which is just what it sounds like, being chronically grumpy. And because they're always so grumpy, it also means that you don't want to ask them to do anything because it's just so difficult to deal with their reactions. And something that they call being headstrong. Just being stubborn and simply refusing to cooperate. It is a pattern that is often a part of narcissistic personalities and can make the simple stuff, like getting the trash taken out, seem more complicated than doing your taxes. For many of you, you'd say, I didn't know there's a word for that. I just thought they were being stubborn and difficult. And perhaps in the simple definition, being oppositional is being stubborn and difficult, but it goes beyond that. It's really the sense of them saying no and exerting their almighty rights just for the sake of saying no. And when we think of how the narcissist is wired, it really does make sense, right? Just the same way they have their grandiosity, they have their entitlement, they have their arrogance, they have all of their really kinds of antagonistic defenses to protect their very sort of variable and vulnerable self-esteem. If they're oppositional, they're going to say, no, I'm not going to be the person who just gives in. I'm strong, and strong people don't do what they're told. It's very petulant, it's very tantrumy, it's very immature. And listen, a 16-year-old who grumbles about doing the trash, we'll give him a developmental pass on that one. A 50-year-old who grumbles about taking out the trash or emptying the dishwasher, not so attractive. And this oppositionality, if you understand it's a part of it, and if you can't get out of the narcissistic relationship, then you can figure out the workarounds. A lot of it has to do with fluffing, very unpleasant. Would love to hear examples of some of the narcissistic oppositionality you've run into. If you want to drop it in the comments, I'm sure you guys have run into lots. Just letting you know, it's a normal part of the pattern. Not much you can do about it because they're always going to say, I have my rights, and God forbid they feel like a victim. Thanks again for tuning in. If you like this video, please give us that like, hit that subscribe button if you want to be part of this channel, and if you want to get notifications, you can hit that bell. Thank you again so much for tuning in. Bye.